Okay, I know I just promised you a video, but I changed my mind. I couldn't hold the camera in a way that was actually going to work. So I just drilled the holes and, hopefully if you're doing this project, you've actually drilled holes in metal before. You just got to go slow and take your time. If you have a drill press, use that, obviously. But if not, you can do it with a regular drill. Just, like I said, take your time. I usually start off with the smallest drill bit that I've got that will fit snugly in the drill gun. This is a 5/64. So I start off with that one first, and I go nice and slow, and that's my pilot hole, okay? And then I step it up. I go from there to what comes next, a 3/32, and then a 7/16 or 7/64, and then 1/8, and then eventually up to whatever size that I need. I just go a little bit at a time, gradually increasing it, and that way the holes they're nice and clean and they work pretty well. Okay, now we need to tap this. We need to make sure that there are threads in here, and so we're going to use our tap wrench, and then we're going to start with the 832 tap. Obviously you should put this in a vise, but I can't mount the camera anywhere near where my vise is, unfortunately, so we're just going to freehand this because I'm that awesome. Okay, we want to go in straight. Okay, that's almost straight. And this is once you get in a few turns, the tap is going to self-correct itself, okay? Because it's not going to want to push too hard against the walls of the hole. Okay, and you want to go slow. You can break these taps, and if you break a tap inside that hole, good luck getting it out. So you want to go very, very slow. Take your time. Really don't give it too much pressure. Basically, you kind of go, a half turn, and then you back it out a little bit, and the teeth will kind of break off the little chips of aluminum or whatever it is. And then you go another half turn, turn it back, another half turn, turn it back, and just, take your time. Go nice and slow. Then eventually it's going to get a lot easier, and then you can speed up a little bit. Okay. A lot of guys might tell you to use special cutting fluid. They might tell you to do other tricks. That might be good for, harder metal or for bigger projects, but this is such a small project that just a basic tap kit works very, very well. Okay, so now we have a threaded hole, and our 832 set screw will go right in there. I'm going to use a 632 set screw for this one. Okay. All right, I'm not going to show you the rest of the process. I'm just going to rinse and repeat. I'm going to drill some more holes, put in some more set screws, and then we'll have to talk about actually mounting the piston again. Okay, now that we've got our holes drilled and tapped, we're ready to mount the piston again. We're going to have to do this a second time, basically. The first time was just for trial and error. Now we got to make sure it's really in there good. If your holes are a little bit, if there are some little metal flakes, you can use, this is a Dremel sanding wheel. You can kind of go in there, rub them off. You can use maybe just a little piece of sandpaper that you've rolled up into a tube. You can kind of get off the little chips, but you don't really have to worry about it too much, because once you have the grips on, you're not going to see those holes. Okay, so you don't have to worry too much about how pretty they came off, which is nice. I've already put set screws on this side, so I'm going to add some set screws to this other side. Dun, dun, dun. Again, I'm using an 832 and a 632, just because I can. All right. And now I'm going to take, I took my piston, I installed my fitting, and I'm going to angle this up, and it's going to go in here like this, and then the hose is going to run up, and then I'm going to just kind of secure the hose off to the left or right of the sear as it comes down here to where the valve is going to go, okay, wherever that goes down there. You can also, if you want, you can actually have it go down, but that's a little bit more tricky. You have to remove some of the material out of this part of the frame, which that's not too hard to do. You can basically just take a drill, and if you put this in a vise and then you take a drill bit and you go straight down, like right there or so, you can cut out a fair bit of the frame, and then just, you know, be careful you don't accidentally go over here. You want to go kind of straight down that way, and then maybe pull the drill or twist the bit a little bit to get out that material. So you can do that, but if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to mess up more of the frame than you have to, this can just go right in there, and then the hose can kind of go up over the top and come by through that way. So let me dun, dun, dun. It's always a trick figuring out which screw is actually preventing it from really moving the way you want it to. There we go. Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to very, very lightly secure this so I can still kind of move it around a little bit. And now we're going to put this whole thing back together again. I actually think it needs to be just a little bit further forward. This is a part you don't want to rush. Okay, you really want to make sure your piston is in the right spot. Okay, so take your time, measure once, measure twice, measure 3 times. There's mine. Because what's in there, once you have those set screws locked down, it's really not going to want to move much. Okay. I usually put Loctite on my set screws just to really make sure they're not going to go anywhere. Look at that, first try. Look at that, that is just perfect. Okay, it's right down as low as I want it to go. There's a little gap between the sear and the piston. I think that's going to work great. So now I'm going to tighten down my set screws, and hopefully the piston won't go anywhere from now on. And now we just got to figure out where we're going to put this. All right. Okay, so now we're making good progress on our Pneumag here. We've got the piston mounted. I've got these set screws down in there, nice and tight. I'll Loctite them later once I have the whole thing finished. But for now, I'm just going to leave them, you know, the way they are, just in case I need to move things around a little bit later. Now we got to figure out where we're going to mount this MSV2 valve. Okay. Now, there's kind of this train of thought of let's mount it as low down as possible, okay? Because basically, wherever your trigger rod is going to hit this, that's going to affect the actual weight of the trigger pull, okay? So if you hit it up top, it's going to be a lot lighter than if you hit it down at the bottom. The trade-off, though, is that if you hit it at the top, the travel distance is going to be a lot further than if you hit it at the bottom. Okay, and so there's kind of this, you know, it's a catch-22. It's a trade-off of what you want to do. I find that if you mount it too low, you run into a couple of different problems. I could mount it all the way down here, okay, but where am I going to mount it? First of all, I don't have this bracket in the middle. Doesn't actually reach down that far. So I could make another bracket, okay, but that seems like a lot of work and it seems a little bit unnecessary. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to cut off just a little bit of this arm so that I can mount it just to the bottom of this bracket. I'm going to aim for this hole needs to go through the bracket, and it's just going to go that way. So let's take our pen here. All right, so this is going to go about there, and then that's going to go about there. I think that looks okay. All right, I'm going to cut off this part with my cutting wheel from my Dremel. That is really the only way to do this. You could, I mean, you could do this with tin snips. You could do it with a hacksaw, but this is a pretty flimsy piece of aluminum. I know it seems pretty tough, but it's really not. It's pretty easy to bend, and if you bend these elbows or these arms or these sides, whatever you want to call them, then they might interfere. They might rub against the inside of the piston or the valve here. So you don't want to do that. If you use a cutting wheel, it works a lot better. It goes so fast and so quick that it will just very gently shear off a little bit of that. Okay, so we're going to do that, and then we're going to figure out where this is going to go. Remember, as you're cutting, you can always cut off more, but you can't put more on. So cut off, be careful, cut off a little bit, and then remeasure, and then cut off a little bit more, and then remeasure until you've got it just where you want it. Okay? Okay, there we go. So I've cut off a little bit of the arm, and I've sanded it down with some sandpaper and some emery just to make sure I don't cut myself on the little shards. And now this is going to fit better. So it'll go right in there. And that arm is still plenty long enough that it's going to be nice and light. And now it can go up high enough that I can actually put a screw through here and mount the MSV2 to this little bracket. Okay, but we're not quite ready to mount the valve yet because there's not quite, this is just a little bit too snug. I know it, I mean, it's okay to be snug, but it's just a little bit too snug. Okay, so this, I mean, the arm starts to engage right about there. So, I mean, that's just really, really tight. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to take a file and just take off a little bit of this corner, and that will just give me another millimeter of play, and will make this fit better. Okay, so that's step number 2, or what step are we on? 40? I don't know. Okay, since this is brass, it goes really quick, which is nice. I mean, carving out this part probably took me the better part of an hour. Carving out this took a minute, maybe. So I've just, focus. There we go. I've just trimmed off a little bit, and now this is going to fit even better inside of here. Now look at that, look at that. Now I can push it up to the back, and there's just a little bit of a gap in between here, and that's what I want. Okay, I want that gap to be there because I don't want this part of the frame actually pushing on the valve or the arm. I want the arm to be able to move nice and independently of anything else. Okay, otherwise, the arm might be partially engaged while I'm doing things. We don't want the arm to do that. Okay, so now I want to drill another hole through here, and then I'm going to drill and tap that hole, or yeah, we'll do that. We'll drill and tap that hole, and then we'll have to put in a screw there. Should be fun.